From the studios of Farm Journal Broadcast, this is AgDay.
The search for greener pastures.
I am chasing grass everywhere.
It's becoming a harder task for ranchers in the South as temperatures continue to rise. Gas prices are on the rise again. What's causing it and how long it could last? As some crops finally get some relief in the form of rain.
Right now, I'm thinking it's going to be the best crop I've ever had.
But the battle against dryness is far from over. The latest from one key growing state right now on AgDay. Good morning, I'm Clinton Griffiths. Rain is finally starting to make a dent in some of the drought conditions in the northwestern Corn Belt, with crop conditions improving in areas of the Corn Belt, including states like South Dakota. Still, only 56% of the corn and 55% of the soybean crop in that state is rated good to excellent. And as AgDay's Michelle Rook reports, the areas impacted by drought have flip-flopped from last year.
With rains over the weekend, crop condition ratings have improved in South Dakota by 4% on beans, 5% on corn. But drought continues to grip a large portion of the state. The difference in the drought from last year to this year is where it's hitting, with the north finally starting to see that dryness creep in, while the southeast is seeing the drought break. Drought hit Tim Ostrom the last 2 seasons at his farm in southeastern South Dakota. So when he planted into dust this spring, he thought he was in for the third.
And then July came, and it was a blessed beginning of July because I got 2 inches on July 3rd and 1 inch on July 4th and some smaller rains thereafter.
So after collecting crop insurance both years, he's optimistic about this year's crop, and he's not alone.
Right now, I'm thinking it's going to be the best crop I've ever had, and 200 bushel corn, some of it.
This year we've had some timely rains. We didn't start out great, but looks like we're going to end up, somewhere around APH 160 to 200, somewhere in that area. Be up and down.
And for many, the outlook for soybeans may be just as promising.
Obviously, we got some good rains coming through here in August, and we got a lot of month left. If we look at the national statistics put forth by a lot of ag research groups, they're thinking we're going to be above where we were last year, which if I had to look out my rearview mirror in my area, yeah, we'll be there.
However, I-90 near Sioux Falls is the dividing line where conditions start to dry out. The Scots came through planting with a great stand, but had very little rain after that, and corn hasn't come through pollination well.
We had been living on the 2/10 and the 3/10 inches of rain, keeping the crop alive, but not really letting it thrive. And this is a heavy use time for corn, especially producing grain. It takes a lot of water to do that.
And even with the weekend rains, he says corn and even soybeans had some irreversible damage that will shave top-end yield.
They're showing some stress that they may not recover from in certain places. So we have areas of good crops, but also areas of pretty good stress.
As you move farther north in the state, drought intensifies.
And we're really concerned with tip back now. Some of our later planted stuff, it's just kind of starting to tassel because it's so stressed, and it might not even set an ear.
And while the rain stabilized the crop, he says the early stress cut yields on both corn and beans.
We've definitely taken our top end off. It's probably going to be average at best in places, and there's some that's going to be probably 20 to 30% less.
In South Dakota, I'm Michelle Rook reporting for AgDay.
And South Dakota will be just one of the states where we'll be checking out corn and soybeans as part of the 2023 Pro Farmer Crop Tour. We're gearing up for this big event, which will cover 7 states in just 4 days from August 21st through the 24th. And you can join us. Be sure to check out agweb.com and look for the Pro Farmer Crop Tour information, or you can join us for the in-person events at each stop, or you can see the results of the day by watching Crop Tour live online each night at 8 p.m. Central Time on all of the Farm Journal social media channels and on agweb.com. Heavy storms hitting the Northeast to start the week. Take a look at what happened Monday in Mooresville, North Carolina. A powerful storm snapping a tree in half, sending it to the ground as high winds and heavy rain push through. Meteorologist Matt Engelbrecht joins us now. And Matt, that area of the country isn't the only one dealing with the potential of severe weather.
Yeah, looking at the severe weather, what happened, but also what could happen coming up on Wednesday. So I want to focus on the severe weather risk. Once you start to see the red, a good indication the ingredients are coming together for another round of severe weather, including portions of Missouri, southern Illinois, and also into Tennessee. And then a little bit wider where you could see some stronger storms move through as well. Now, this is coming up on Wednesday with the system working in and across the United States. Coming up in a little bit, we'll take a look at the flooding risk that also goes with the severe weather risks. So again, this is coming up on Wednesday. By Thursday, that piece of energy moves closer to the East Coast with another spot up near the Dakotas, possibly under severe weather risk as well. Go ahead and take a look at your screen here, and you can really almost taste what is going on in this video. Robert sending this one in, and it was up before the sun earlier this week in Lansing, Michigan, harvesting sweet corn. Looks so good. I'll have more on your forecast coming up.
China's economy appears to be continuing to falter. New data shows that China experienced a significant decrease in trade last month, with both imports and exports recording double-digit declines due to weakening demand both domestically and internationally. In fact, the country saw a 14.5% year-on-year drop in sales. Now, that's the steepest decline since the start of the pandemic back in February of 2020. Meanwhile, imports also dropping 12.4%, the sharpest decrease since January. At the same time, Beijing's soybean imports are up sharply from a year ago. Trade numbers show that China imported 9.73 million metric tons of soybeans last month. Now that's down more than 5% from June, but up more than 23% from last year. Chinese crush margins also turning positive in mid-June. That's driven by stronger demand for soy meal and soy oil. The attorneys general on behalf of Iowa and Nebraska are suing the EPA over E15. They're demanding the temporary waiver allowing year-round sales of E15 fuel become permanent. Previously, E15 wasn't sold during summer months due to reported environmental concerns. While the states had requested the agency last year allow year-round E15 sales, however, the attorneys general argue that the EPA failed to address their request within the 90-day response deadline specified by law. In April, EPA issued an initial temporary E15 sales waiver valid for 20 days. Since then, they have granted 5 more waivers, the most recent of which ends today. Meanwhile, gas and diesel prices are continuing to move higher once again. AAA reporting the national average price standing at $3.82 a gallon. That's up from last week's $3.79 a gallon. Diesel, it's averaging $4.20 a gallon, up 13 cents from just last week. GasBuddy.com says it follows a rise in oil prices and pressure from hot weather that's impacting refineries. However, experts say the pace of increases has started to slow and it appears to have peaked over the weekend. That said, the experts think that diesel prices could continue to see some increases in the near future. And another oil company appears to be venturing into the world of making greener jet fuel. Reuters reporting Phillips 66 and ADM are in talks about a low-carbon jet fuel joint venture. Reuters, citing unnamed sources, saying the proposal aims to repurpose ADM's dry corn milling operations to transform grain-based alcohol fuel into more sustainable jet fuel. ADM restructured its dry corn milling into a subsidiary called Vantage Corn Processors, and it sold its dry mill in Peoria, Illinois back in 2021. Now, it's reported the 2 remaining mills in Columbus, Nebraska and Cedar Rapids, Iowa can manufacture 613 million gallons of ethanol annually. Livestock markets mostly in the red while the major grains find a way to rally. We'll have details of that coming up in markets now. And later, heat stress is a real concern for livestock owners during the summer months. We'll stop by a cattle operation in Louisiana to check on the herd in the country.
Ag Day, presented by Pioneer. What's next happens when the name on the cap matches the power of one's purpose. Pioneer. What's next happens here.
More bad news for one plant-based meat maker, Beyond Meat, posting a 30% drop in revenue for the second quarter. In response, the company reduced its revenue outlook for the year. It's blaming the losses on inflation, interest rates, and ongoing recession concerns. Beyond Meat stock sliding 10% in after-hours trade on Monday. It's down more than 60% over the past year.
Welcome to Markets. I'm Michelle Rick along with Randy Martinson, Martinson Ag, and we do have the WASDE coming up on Friday. And Randy, let's kind of talk through this because we're going to have a lot of eyes on what USDA does with yield. What kind of adjustments do you think we might see?
I'm not looking for much of an adjustment. You look at the Western Corn Belt, seen some weather issues, but we haven't seen so much as far as in the Eastern Corn Belt. They've actually had some pretty good growing conditions. So I'd be surprised if USDA comes in and makes too much of an adjustment in this report in August, especially now since this weather is we had the weather forecast for it changing, cooler temperatures, a little bit of rain. I think, now that we've gotten into a little bit better weather, I'd be surprised if USDA makes some adjustments.
Well, and USDA actually doesn't do any field surveys until the September report, right?
Exactly. So this is basically still going to go off of, weather forecasts and how the weather's been kind of pushing the crop or has been affecting the crop. And right now, with this better improving weather and the idea that the crop is improving a little bit, I would think USDA would hold off on making any adjustments.
What about the demand side of the equation? That's the other thing that USDA could actually tinker with, right?
That's the one that I'm more worried about. You look at the demand side, that our exports have been running behind normal. We haven't been able to keep pace on whether in both the inspections, the shipment side and on the sales side. So it's been a little disappointing as far as exports are concerned. Also, we've been seeing a little bit poorer performance as far as ethanol is concerned. And our crush is seeing a little bit of a pull down. Now, I don't expect them to change crush, but I wouldn't be surprised if they don't lower ethanol a little bit, and I would expect that they'll lower exports a little bit.
Yeah, corn exports have been very questionable. So is the bigger fear here maybe, Randy, that they don't adjust yield at all? They leave it unchanged, and then maybe they actually lower demand, especially for corn? A lot of people saying it's still too high.
Yeah, that is the biggest fear right now, because then, of course, if you don't make any adjustments on the yield side and you lower the demand, that increases the stocks. And right now, we're sitting at a stocks estimate in corn that's, well over the 2 billion. We increase that much more, it's going to be really hard to kind of recover off of that.
All right, thanks for joining us, Randy Martinson with Martinson Ag. That's Markets Now. We'll have more Ag Day coming up.
Registration is open for the 2023 Pro Farmer Crop Tour, August 21st through the 24th. Attend one of our nightly meetings or join online as we gain insight on the 2023 growing season. Visit profarmercroptour.com/register to select the stop nearest you.
So a little bit ago, we looked at the severe weather potential coming up on Wednesday and Thursday. Now we overlay the flooding potential. So it's not just the tornado threat, the strong wind threat, or the hail threat. It's also heavy downpours, about 15 to 40% chance anywhere you see that yellow over the same bullseye that could see severe weather. So a combination of heavy downpours to go along with severe weather threat. Again, that's on Wednesday. As we go into our Thursday, this shifts off to the east. And if you remember, the severe weather potential also had a contour in and around the Dakotas. Well, the heavy rainfall, the 5 to 15% potential for some flooding, works into Minneapolis and Minnesota, as well as back down here into the Four Corner states, about a 5 to 15% chance of some flooding rains. Again, that's going up on Thursday. By Friday, it starts to spread in and across the Midwest and back down here to the south as one system starts to exit with a ridge of high pressure in place. By Saturday, that energy again continues to move to the east, but we stay in that 5 to 15% chance of heavy downpours or flooding potential. Temperature outlook between August 13th and August 17th. You got a pocket of cool air, and where we just looked at the severe weather potential, kind of setting out the chance of some scattered showers and thunderstorms developing right along that gradient, with the above average temperatures continuing to impact parts of the south as well as the southeast and the southwest, going all the way up into Seattle and Washington with above normal temperatures possibly in the forecast. So as we go through our Thursday night and into our Friday, start to see some individual showers and thunderstorms developing where we could have, again, those heavier downpours. Now, this is not Wednesday or Thursday. This is for your Friday, where we see a return to some scattered showers and thunderstorms back into portions of the Midwest. The jet stream Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday takes a nice little dip off the East Coast by Thursday night and Friday as well. Minnesota, Buffalo, partly cloudy, high around 81, low of 55. Kentucky, mostly cloudy, high of 84, low of 68. And what about Pennsylvania? Partly cloudy, high around 79 degrees.
Genetically modified seeds were first introduced in 1996, and USDA researchers now say they've by far become the dominant seed choice of farmers. This graphic from the Economic Research Service shows that growth happened in just a few years, starting with corn, soybeans, and cotton, followed by canola and sugar beets. By 2020, it says about 55% of the total harvested cropland in the U.S. was grown with varieties having at least one GM trait. The most prevalent GM traits are herbicide tolerance and insect resistance, and it says now GM seeds are also catching on in alfalfa, potatoes, papaya, squash, and apples. The last farm bill created a vaccine bank for foot and mouth disease. We'll have an update on where that stands next. And later, we're off to Louisiana, where cattlemen are guiding their herds through the heat of the summer season in the country. Foot and mouth disease hasn't been an issue in this country since 1929, but what if it did show up? We know that if there was an outbreak, it could be particularly devastating for the beef and pork industries. And that's why Congress, in the last Farm Bill, officially created the National Vaccine and Veterinary Countermeasures Bank, or what's commonly referred to as the Vaccine Bank. Dr. Julie Wallen with USDA's Animal and Plant Health Inspection Service recently provided an update on the bank's work.
But we also stockpile diagnostic test kits so that we can quickly detect other diseases such as African swine fever, high-path avian influenza, classical swine fever, and others. About $70 million in the vaccine bank, most of that being for foot and mouth disease vaccine.
USDA recently announcing another $6 million investment for the bank for next year. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention is reporting 2 people caught swine flu after visiting pig exhibits at fairs in Michigan. The agency says each patient became ill with flu-like symptoms about 10 days after visiting the exhibits at 2 different fairs last month. It also says neither patient had to be hospitalized, and there was no person-to-person spread of the virus in either case. The agency is reminding people to avoid eating or drinking around the pig barn at the fair and to avoid contact with animals that appear to be ill. You should also wash your hands after visiting exhibits like this. It's still summer and it's still hot down south. We're off to Louisiana to see how this herd is beating the heat in the country.
Got equipment to sell privately but tired of scams and hassles? Visit MachineryPete.com and click Sell Mine. MachineryPete.com, the simple and secure way to buy and sell equipment online.
High heat continues in the south, including Louisiana, where temperatures are expected to be up in the triple digits again before the end of the week. This week in Louisiana, Agriculture's Carl Wiggers recently visited a cattle operation near Clinton to show us how the cows are beating the heat.
We've been hovering abnormally dry D0 and D1 for at least a month or 2.
The effects of this drought are clear in these pastures. However, Kent says her fields are even more behind schedule due to tough freezes at Christmas and early this spring.
This is very much so a domino effect in terms of last year's weather challenges very quickly flooding into this year's weather challenges affecting this next calf crop that hasn't even been born yet.
The hot, dry weather is not only making the fields dusty, but cattle are not eating as much of the grass that is in front of them. This means lighter cattle are heading to market.
When you're coming up 25 or 50 pounds lighter than you should, and those calves are worth $2+ a pound, that's very quickly becoming $50 or $100+ of lost revenue on that animal because you're coming up short on weight.
Higher market prices are nice to see, but Kent's optimism is guarded because of high input costs. As you can see, the cows want to be in the shade and close to or even in the water.
Water and shade access are just as important as an abundance of grass to graze. This particular property, we have ponds in almost every field, whereas on all of our other properties, with the exception of one, we have fresh water. We have water lines run through the length of the property, feeding water tanks.
While it's nice to have ponds here, Kent has had a tough time keeping enough grass for cattle to graze in these fields.
This particular farm has struggled more than all of our other locations in terms of being dry. All of them are dry. I am chasing grass everywhere, but especially here, what should be a slower rotation is going a lot faster than it should, just to keep grass in front of the cows.
In Clinton, Louisiana, I'm Carl Wiggers for This Week in Louisiana Agriculture.
And our thanks to Carl Wiggers and the entire team over at This Week in Louisiana Agriculture for sharing that story with us. From all of us here at AgDay, I'm Clinton Griffiths. Have a great day.